Morning, fellow education advocates. It is an honor to represent Philippine Business for Education or PBED to the 6th Magiting Digicon. Gurong Magiting, Kaagapay sa Pagbuo ng Isang Bansang Nagbabasa. The economic and social disruption brought about by the pandemic is devastating. It affected and changed the lives of so many, most especially our learners. School closures and the drastic shift to online classes contributed to our learning crisis, our learning losses. And for a while now, you have been hearing that term learning crisis repeatedly, but today is an opportune time to bring to light our country's state of learning, which I know you all already know, but maybe it would be good to have more data and more meat into it. But before I delve into details, allow me to share a bit of a background on our organization, PBED. So 16 years ago, PBED was formed by the country's top businessmen or CEOs as a response to the country's need for greater education and economic alignment. We pushed for programs that would help every learner to read and write at grade level and every graduate to have employability skills and access to lifelong learning. We have two programmatic focus, which are teaching and learning and workforce development. We aim for an inclusive educational system that will enable all Filipinos lead productive lives and contribute to national development. In more than a decade of working to improve the Philippine education system, we saw that it is complex and it has multiple moving parts. While there are different goals per phase, each one builds on the progress of the previous, and as such, all levels are just as crucial and are worth investing in to ensure quality education for all Filipinos. But unfortunately, the Philippines is in the midst of a learning crisis where gaps in quality and access weave through all the phases of education. Students are missing out on the foundational milestones on nutrition, learning, and development, triggering a chain of learning losses and persist throughout their life. The cracks in our education system eventually translates to the lack of productivity of our workforce, leading to poor economic growth, which then affects future generations. And this becomes a vicious cycle wherein poor education and our poor economy drag each other down. But our Constitution guarantees that the state shall promote and protect the right of all to education. However, it still remains inaccessible to many, and thus not everyone has the opportunity to learn. Data on net enrollment in the last 5 academic years shows that 1 out of 10 children are not able to attend school or have no access to basic education. The gaps in school participation is especially pronounced in kindergarten, making it apparent that learning crisis affects the child's life during the early stages in the learning cycle. The kindergarten enrollment rate in our country shows that 1 out of 4 kindergarten children or for or kinder-age children are not attending preschool and are missing out on emotional, psychosocial skills needed to learn more complex skills at succeeding grade levels. And aside from the gaps in early education, there is a prevalence of malnutrition in young children. Rapid brain growth occurs throughout the first 5 to 6 years of a child's life. And adequate nutritional support that meets their developmental needs is key in preparing them for the years of learning ahead. The high prevalence of malnutrition is indicative of the threat to their health, learning capacity, and future potential. Given the aforementioned issues young learners are grappling with, it is not surprising that these eventually lead to chain of losses that emerge throughout their years in their education. By the time children reach their 4th or 5th grade, the majority of students are struggling to acquire the basic skills of reading. And we all know that reading has been described as the gateway of learning. And if such skill is not cultivated, it is as if we're closing the gate of learning for the students. The Department of Education, or DepEd, acknowledged that the country has been suffering from learning crisis and learning poverty, following a report from the World Bank that 90% of children aged 10 could not read simple text. In 2019, even before the pandemic struck, learning poverty in the Philippines was already at 70%. With the challenges in reading that our learners are facing, numeracy skills, and the capacity to absorb advanced subjects in the latter years of basic education suffer as well. This is also reflected in our global assessment standings, such as PISA 2018, wherein we rank among the lowest in the world in terms of reading, mathematics, and science. Ultimately, teachers play a huge role in our learning outcomes. Currently, there are 1.2 million teachers in both public and private schools, and we need to improve the quality of instructions and teachers with the target that all learners must meet the basic skill set by national and international standards. Sadly, we have to admit that many of our teachers have poor content knowledge in subjects they are teaching. But to be fair, research findings by the World Bank indicate that that what they're taught in college are not actually connected with the lessons that they're supposed to teach. By the time elementary and high school teachers render service, their knowledge of subject matter is found to be low in most subjects, especially in math, Filipino, and science. Hence, you cannot give what you don't have. Our teachers need to be equipped and supported with the right skills, knowledge, and resources. Most importantly, teachers need autonomy to facilitate learning. We must take a systemic approach in developing a pool of highly effective and autonomous teachers by looking at their pre-service education, licensure, hiring, appraisal, retention, and working conditions. Let me share that in our reading remediation program called Kiddie Learning Train, we saw a significant increase in reading and math scores among the laggards in early grades or K to 3. An important factor in the success of this project was the help of volunteer tutors with BS education background. With their support, students were able to catch up in reading and math, and this is why PBED advocates for the hiring of para teachers or teaching assistants to provide support on teaching and learning. And on a national scale, although education sector receives the biggest budget, we have yet to meet the international recommendation of UN of allocating 6% of the annual gross domestic product. To afford our learners and teachers quality education, the government must invest and utilize the resources allocated efficiently. And globally, Philippines has the lowest public spending per student among participating countries in PISA 2018. Compared to our neighboring countries in the Asia and the Pacific region, our public spending per student in the primary and secondary education levels is trailing behind Singapore, Brunei, Thailand, and Malaysia. The government must invest not only in training our teachers, but also in providing them the learners with the right facilities, equipment, and materials to be able to conduct their classes efficiently and effectively. And without such support, our learners will not be able to adapt and achieve their maximum potential once they enter the workforce. Hence, we must immediately break this chain of losses by focusing our efforts on educational reform areas that will provide enabling environment and trigger enabling mechanisms that will achieve maximum impact or optimum impact. The task may seem daunting given our current state, but as we say in PBED, education is everyone's business. We all have a role to play if we want to overcome our learning crisis. So the government, private sector, and all of us in the education sector must work together towards the goal of shared prosperity, where all Filipinos are healthy, literate, and productive. Maraming salamat po.